It's the boy, Bubba, let's coming through. Hella clutch, flawless, can't be touched. It's your boy, Bubba, let's. Yeah, I need that hot take. I need the truth and everything that is not fake.
Welcome back, Bubba Bunch, to another edition of the Bubba Let Sports Podcast. It is episode 208, and today, look, this is kind of like a spontaneous, in-the-moment podcast. I know we got the preview for the AFC and the NFC Championship. Those games will be previewed on the following episode. But, I haven't done one since Monday, and I was like, you know what? I just want to do one. I want to talk some sports because there's been a lot going on this week. And I guess, it's kind of just an episode of me saying, what's on my mind, right? What's Bubba thinking about? And there's a lot going on in my mind right now. First of all, look, we'll get to the games and we'll preview them more in the following episode. But I do want to talk about certain topics about those games. And then I also want to talk about some bad takes around sports because there's been some really bad ones as of late. And it just reminds me of all the bad ones that I've heard for quite a while now. And of course, we'll talk about the coaching hires around the NFL. And it's going to be a short episode. Let's just make it casual, right? Just, sit down. If you're driving, cruise, baby. Cruise. But if you're just chilling at home, and listen to this, let's just relax. Grab a drink, relax, all right? Now, if you're watching this, you're seeing that I have new glasses. And most of you probably didn't realize that until I said it because no one realized it until I actually said it. So, still trying to get adjusted to it. Haven't been feeling that good over the last couple days. Been dealing with the headaches that most of you know I've been dealing with for a very long time. But as of late, they've been really bad. And I think it's because of the glasses, trying to get adjusted to the new prescription. So, that I've been sleeping, resting all day. Really, I haven't done anything today. And I just wanted to get on here, man. I'm wanting to do something today, and I feel like this is the way to do it. So let's just enjoy this episode. Not really going to mean anything, but let's just talk some sports, all right? So, look, these coaching hires have been something of a wonder to think about. Because in previous years, I really think that I've looked at all these hires and I said, I know most of these guys. I know their work, their history, and there's a strong reason why they would be hired by a different team. And when we look at some of the early hires around the NFL, we're only down to 4 teams, so most of these coaching vacancies are getting done. We started with Urban Meyer with Jacksonville. Love the move, but I have my concerns. Go check out that episode. Robert Saleh to the Jets. Really like the hire. And then right after that, because we only talked about those two really and the possible vacancies that can be filled, Atlanta soon after hired Arthur Smith, offensive coordinator for the Titans, literally the next day. And based on Tennessee's recent success on offense, with Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, their development in that offense, really grown that group of guys. I think Arthur Smith is a really good hire for Atlanta. Not the sexiest or most noticeable pick out of all of these, but I think it was a good, safe bet of a guy that has had success with his former team, had a lot to do with their success in Tennessee. And, I think Arthur Smith has been on the radar for being a head coach recently, as of late. And I think it was a good move overall by the Atlanta Falcons. Now, they need a lot of work. I think this is an older group, especially on defense, that needs to revamp it. I don't know if they're going full-on rebuild mode because I don't expect Todd Gurley to be there next year. I could really see them get rid of Julio Jones and to trade value somewhat because, personally, I'm off Julio Jones. I just think the injuries are just getting too much now for a guy that talented. So you can still get value out of him. You can still get some picks or some players out of him. So trade Julio Jones. And Matt Ryan's coming to an end, so I don't know what I see the Atlanta Falcons doing in this first round of the NFL draft. And with a new offensive-minded coach, I could see them go quarterback, especially high. I mean, they're a top 5 pick in this year's draft. Maybe they go after one of the hot shots in college, whether that's Mac Jones or Kyle Trask or even Zach Wilson. Maybe I could see them doing that with the fact that Matt Ryan's just getting to the end part of his career, and I don't think that contract is worth keeping him, especially for a guy that isn't going to give you the upper level of elite talent at that position. So it's interesting what Atlanta's going to do for the next few years, but I think Arthur Smith is a good hire. We'll see. And then personally, I think out of all of these, I think I love the Chargers hire the most. I think Brandon Staley, announced as the new head coach, former defensive coordinator for the Rams, so he basically doesn't have to move. I mean, he's literally going in the same facility. But Staley, what he did in 1 year with the Chargers, or with the Rams, excuse me. Like, I praised Wade Phillips for building that defense up to being one of the most, I guess, just influential defenses in the league, to where they can make an impact on the game. They can put points up on the board. It's not just a bend, don't break defense. Like, no, they take control of what's happening on the field. And then for him to suddenly retire or just step down. He's not officially retired, but he didn't have any job this year. For him to just suddenly be gone and have to be filled by Brandon Staley, and we look at this defense in 2020, at the beginning of 2020, and we say to ourselves, like, look, this is a good group, but there's a lot of things going on for the Rams organization of, contracts that they have to pay. They have to pay a lot of these guys. Do they keep them on the roster? And especially on the defense, to where they plugged in a lot of young guys. They still had their cornerstone of Aaron Donald up front, and they still had their cornerstone in the secondary with Jalen Ramsey, and they paid him a lot of good money last year. So it was a matter of filling in the gaps between those other, or between those two players. I mean, they had to fill 9 guys that you're like, okay, this is going to be the best group that we have all year long. And granted, they are a good group of players. They are really good. I mean, they were ranked as the best defense in the NFL for many weeks. And even though they lose badly to the Green Bay Packers, I think their collective effort throughout the season allowed the Rams to go farther than they should have. But a lot of that had to do with Brandon Staley. I think Brandon Staley is a genius, and Sean McVay is building himself a nice coaching tree around him. And if I'm the Chargers, I'm saying he's coming from a winning mentality culture. He is seeing success and what it takes for that. We have a potentially good defense in Los Angeles with the Chargers. And when James comes back, we still have a good group of guys up front with Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa. That defense can be really damn good. And their offense, you have the future in Justin Herbert, and you have one of the most underrated wide receivers in all of football in Keenan Allen. This team deserves to make it far into the playoffs. They deserve a year where they finally get over the hump. Over these last 2 years, it's been the fact that they can't win close games. Well, the Rams, knowing that they've played in one of the hardest divisions in all of football, know close games week in and week out. Like, Sean McVay just handles that very well against the 49ers, against the Seahawks, and against the Cardinals this year. It's like, most of the time, the Rams play really well under pressure. And they made it to a Super Bowl just a few years ago. They've been a really good playoff team over the last 2 years. It's just the NFC conference that is just filled with stacked teams. And the Rams, the reason why they were a good playoff team this year is because of Brandon Staley. I really think that he deserves a lot of credit, and he's a mastermind for what he did in 1 year with the Rams. What the Chargers needed to do was just get a nice, very consistent leader as their head coach that Anthony Lynn could not do. Anthony Lynn could not handle the pressure. Brandon Staley was just given a defense, and he's like, just do something with it. We got to win some football games. And immediately, I mean, that was just, it felt like there was no running start. Like, it was just pure full speed ahead with the Rams defense. So I think this was a really good move by the Chargers, who maybe I would have seen if they could have gotten Eric Bieniemy, because the Texans job is just not going to be filled by anybody that is enticed by that job. I don't know who's going to be the next head coach for the Houston Texans, but no matter who it is, I don't care if it's the smartest guy in the world, I'm saying that guy is an idiot for taking that job. So Eric Bieniemy, who still has a few weeks left, at least another week of being the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, could have been possibly a really good hire for the Chargers, because with the Jets and the Jacksonville Jaguars just getting their coach immediately, Arthur Smith getting the job the day after, well, that left the Lions, the Eagles, the Houston Texans, and the Chargers really as the only strong teams in the hunt for a new head coach. And I felt out of all of those jobs, the Chargers are the best option, because you know you have a talented quarterback and you know you have something to build off of immediately. It doesn't take time. The Chargers are a good team. They just needed to win those close games, and they're in the playoffs. Brandon Staley is a great hire. But I think if they would have waited and been patient with it, I thought Eric Bieniemy would have gone to LA to be the coach there, because I don't see him taking the job in Houston. And if he does, that's bad news for Eric. So I think the Chargers did a good move. They could have done a great move if the cards were laid out correctly. And then a few days after, Detroit Lions hired Dan Campbell, who is probably the most confusing move of this early off season. The assistant head coach and tight ends coach of the New Orleans Saints, who just got beaten by the Tampa Bay Bucks in the divisional round. And he agrees to a 6-year deal to be the new head coach of the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions, by the way, that I have a strong feeling does not have Matthew Stafford as their quarterback next year, who is in shambles because of the lack of work Matt Patricia did as a coach. Their defense has really good individuals, but as a unit, they are not what you want out of Detroit, and what you expect out of Matt Patricia to be a defensive-minded coach. This is a organization that is going to be really bad for a very, very long time. They need a lot of work done. Like I said, with their defense, and you could say this for the whole team, they have individuals that are really good, but as a overall team, they are just not it, right? They need a rebuild. And when you look at Dan Campbell and you look at that press conference that he had, I think today, it was either today or yesterday, and he says, we're going to fight, and we're going to punch some teeth in, we're going to break a kneecap or something like that. And this dude looks like, I saw a meme. It was like him in his office, and it looks like a guy stressing out that he's got to sell the most F-150s in the entire office. This guy doesn't look like a head coach. And God bless his soul, man. Yeah, I'm looking at his coaching history, and he spent most of his career with the Miami Dolphins. Now, other than the New Orleans Saints history over the last few years, he's been with Miami, but he's most notable for his playing career, where he actually played for the Cowboys, but he also played for the Detroit Lions. And I gotta say, man, for you to get a 6-year deal when you have only been an interim head coach, he's been a head coach before, and I think that was with Miami in 2015. Other than the interim head coach job, he has been the assistant head coach for the New Orleans Saints. And I don't know about you, but my idea of who's making the decisions in New Orleans, it's Sean Payton all day long. This is really the first time that I've heard Dan Campbell come up in a conversation of being a head coach in the NFL. For the Detroit Lions, who were in the hunt for the same coaches, I mean, Brandon Staley would have been an amazing hire for Detroit. Even if you would have gotten Arthur Smith, Robert Saleh, Urban Meyer, or I don't know, if you go after like a Wade Phillips, I don't know. I just don't think Dan Campbell is the guy to do it because he just doesn't have the experience. I'm saying credit to Campbell, though, because he's got to put up a hell of an interview for a team that he played with in his career. So they probably know him fairly well as far as the owners and the top tier front office, because they probably scouted him and they know that he can do a really good job as a leader in the locker room and all that. That was like 12, 13 years ago. And to just be up front, I think 6 years for a head coach, especially a guy that doesn't have the experience like Dan Campbell has, or doesn't, I should say. A 2 to 3 year deal makes a lot of sense to me because that's my grace period of a coach. Unless they are just going full rebuild and saying, look, you are going to be the guy. No matter what happens, we know we're going to be bad over the next few years. But at least show us something. Give us a little bit of progression each year. And then by the time we get to the 5th or 6th year of your deal, then we'll really see where we're at. And that's when I'll really make a decision of whether or not you're the guy or not. That's my only comprehension and reasoning behind this move. Other than that, the Detroit Lions are just a horrible organization. I'm just hearing this guy in his press conference. I'm saying, I don't believe it. I don't know if he's going to be taken seriously off the bat by a group of guys that has just been plagued by terrible coaching for most of their career. And I'm looking at some of these players that they deserve to go somewhere where they can succeed and win rather than just put up numbers like Kenny Golladay or Marvin Jones or Matthew Stafford. These guys deserve better than a guy that has no head coaching experience other than being an interim coach in 2015. I think they deserve better than that. And out of all the hires, this makes the least sense to me. Because the only other hire that has been made since then is the Philadelphia Eagles I don't know if it's official yet. I think it is official. I think this is just outdated. They're expected or have already hired Nick Sirianni, the former offensive coordinator for the Colts. Now, we have not heard this name very often, but immediately I made a connection to Frank Reich, and I was like, you know what? That just proves it. Philadelphia, when's the last time they succeeded? Well, it was because it was their entire coaching staff helping them win a Super Bowl. That was Doug Peterson, Frank Reich, and Jim Schwartz. Okay, so then where did Frank Reich go after Philly? He went to Indianapolis and built a really good coaching staff and really progressed this organization to be a really good contender in the AFC. Sucks about Andrew Luck, but they built a great offensive line, probably one of the best offensive lines in football. Their defense is super talented and physical. They suddenly have one of the best rushers in the NFL in Jonathan Taylor. They have a good future with Michael Pittman Jr., in my opinion. Everything about this team speaks about a good next 5 years. And a lot of that has to do with Frank Reich finally coming in and saying, all right, I'm going to take over. We need stability. And one of the guys he brought in was Nick Sirianni. Now, Sirianni has been working alongside Frank Reich for probably close to a decade now. He worked with him in, where was it? San Diego Chargers, that back when they were the San Diego Chargers, but it was early 2010s and then mid 2010s to where they worked alongside each other in San Diego. And then they went their separate ways, found their way back in Indianapolis. So if you're Philly and you're saying that when's the last time that we had success, it was just a few years ago. And it was Frank Reich. If Frank Reich is our guy, and he was our guy, then we will believe in Nick Sirianni. And we see a Sirianni guy who worked with Frank Reich. He worked alongside Phillip Rivers as far as a quarterback's coach. And he was what's the right word for it? There's a title for his name. It's like the offensive... I forget the name of it. I'm so sorry. I'm kind of off of it today. But he worked very well with the offense back with the Chargers. And so if you're in Philly and you're saying, I don't know who is our guy, do we really want to look at Carson Wentz one more time? I feel like that is the right move to do because there is a lot of talent with Carson Wentz. It's just whether or not the locker room is all on board with it. I think if the entire locker room is with the decision to go with Carson Wentz, then you're in the right direction, right? It's just a matter of Carson just finding himself again. So with a new head coach, last time he found himself was with Frank Reich. Keep going back to that because that is the basis of this decision and this hire. If you want to give Carson Wentz one more try, then give him with a guy that he probably knows very well or a coaching style that he knows very well in Frank Reich to Nick Sirianni. And if that doesn't work, then you look at Jalen Hurts and you say, all right, you're the next guy up. So, I worked with Phillip Rivers. I worked with some really good quarterbacks. So this should work. Like, if you can't succeed with Frank Reich type of offensive system or coaching style, then neither of these guys deserve to be the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the only problem is, if I'm Nick Sirianni, I'm going to a place where it's a disaster right now, to where the front office and these players are not on the same page, especially after week 17. That debacle was just terrible for this entire Eagles organization. They need to pay a lot of guys. They don't have the money to pay all those guys. They're going to need to get rid of all these guys. And I don't know if they figured out their coaching or their quarterback situation yet. So figure that out first. That's why you hire Nick, and then go from there. But at least this makes sense, right? Like, the Eagles hiring a guy that they know very well makes sense. How does a few years of playing tight end for the Detroit Lions get you a 6-year deal to be the new head coach for them? It's the only move that doesn't make sense to me, and I don't know. I really just don't understand why the Detroit Lions went this way, because they interviewed Bieniemy. They were gonna interview Todd Bowles, who has done great things with the Buccaneers, but they canceled that interview. Then they interviewed Marvin Lewis. I'm glad you didn't go that way. They interviewed Saleh and they interviewed Smith. I don't know, man. I don't know. I just don't like that. I don't like that decision by the Detroit Lions. But anyways, look, bad takes, right? They happen. I've had a few bad takes in my career. I thought Baker Mayfield was going to win MVP like last year. Didn't happen. It happens. It happens, guys. Even the best have their bad days. Even some of the greatest that I've grown up with in my sports life have had really bad takes. I heard one a couple of days ago from Colin Cowherd, who I respect a lot because he makes some really good points and he makes some pretty questionable comments. But this one's bad. The fact that as of right now, Patrick Mahomes is in concussion protocol and is a limited participant in practice. We still don't know whether he will start in the AFC Championship game this Sunday. And that is huge for the Kansas City Chiefs because I don't think that with Chad Henne, they will beat the Buffalo Bills. And I'm actually on Buffalo no matter what. I think even with Patrick Mahomes in that game, I think Buffalo pulls out the victory. But without Patrick Mahomes, it's a different story. It's a different game. And I get how Colin sees this. And there's got to be some element, right? I remember doing that episode to where just the whole landscape of sports media with ESPN, Fox Sports, they're just not the same anymore. It's all about clickbait. It's all about getting the attention and getting the views. It doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. As long as it's not anything that could get us legally in trouble, make it. Say it. Because we want people to tune in and be like, excuse me, why did you say that? And then if people just want to hang on to that and just say, oh, what's it today? You know, what is going to be said today that's going to be outrageous that we're going to talk about on Twitter? That is exactly what First Take is, what Undisputed is. It's why Skip Bayless has a career. It's exactly why Max Kellerman has a career and Stephen A. Smith for, granted he's done really well for his career and he's worked his ass off for that. But if you ask anybody who's only been watching sports and getting into it for the last few years, they know Stephen A. Smith for the outrageous things that he does. It's not because he makes really solid points. But Colin Cowherd is one of those guys where I'm like, he worked his butt off and he's made some really good takes, done some really good things. Occasionally I'm like, whoa, that is way too much for me to think about. Like, that is outrageous. One of those things was, if I'm the NFL and I'm saying, well, Patrick Mahomes isn't ready to play in the AFC Championship, which is one of the biggest games of the year, let us know when Patrick is ready and we'll play the game then. In a COVID-plagued season, where if you've seen a lot of AFC teams, by the way, like the Baltimore Ravens, who had just the absolute worst few weeks of any NFL organization that we've seen for a very long time. I mean, they just got dominated with positive tests. And it was horrible to watch that we saw over, 20 players have positive tests. They go on the COVID list. We have coaching staff, personnel, all test positive. So then they have to play that Steelers game, which was absolutely terrible to watch. Then we look at Tennessee, who in that week were supposed to go against the Buffalo Bills, and they just continue to have positive tests. They did not practice at all. They only practiced once in that entire week, and that was basically a walkthrough. And they went into that Buffalo game, and it was just weird to watch because Tennessee dominated that game, even though they had no practice. But even in those certain circumstances, they still played because it's during a pandemic. It's affecting dozens of people at that point and their family members, and you're trying to get it under control. Patrick Mahomes is the face of the NFL. I mean, it's the same thing as like going into the Western Conference Finals, Game 7, and LeBron James has the flu or something like that. He gets a concussion. Would you make that case for LeBron James? Would you say, well, if it's the biggest game of the year, it's the Clippers versus the Lakers in Game 7, and he can't play if we play it on Sunday, but if we play it on Tuesday, then he will play. Let's just move it to Tuesday then. Because we want the ratings, we want the money, we want the rev. How is that fair to any other guy that's on that field or court? So you're looking at other teams that were not given special treatment, even though they were plagued by positive tests in Baltimore, Tennessee. There's been so many teams that have dealt with these positive tests, yet they didn't get any special treatment. But it's okay when we put in the face of the NFL and give them an extra couple days to rest up. How is that fair at all? And if you're just trying to say this to get a like, get a view, get the ratings up, then none of this matters, right? Because they know, we don't know. If in their head, I'm only saying this because the like Fox Sports told me to, or ESPN told me to just be outrageous. Then respect to you, man. Get your money, but overall, that's just not who I want to be. Like I want to be the guy where you say he has really good takes and he has really good information. He knows what he's talking about and he backs it up. How can you back up? Patrick Mahomes deserves better treatment because he is so good at football. So let's move the game a little bit. Let's move it a few days just so we can get a true matchup. If this was the Super Bowl and Green Bay had Aaron Rodgers like bust up his knee and you only needed a few more days to get it ready, are you going to move the Super Bowl? No, that's not how it works. You can't just move stuff. And to, like, I don't get it, man. I really just don't get these bad takes. That's one. How about the Stephen A one? Because it's fresh in my memory. How about when Steve Nash got hired? And it wasn't a thing about, oh, well, he's young for being a head coach and he doesn't have any coaching experience. I mean, he worked as an assistant and really he was really close to the players, but he's never been a head coach. And now you got a Brooklyn Nets team that is filled with talent. This is before James Harden. You got KD, you got Kyrie Irving, you have a really good roster that's deep with a good bench that has a future here. You know, seeing them play in the bubble last year, yeah, they got outed by the Toronto Raptors, but you're saying, like, look, for what they had going into the bubble, I wasn't expecting this at all. So now that you get KD and Kyrie working together and they're finally healthy, Brooklyn can be really good next year in the Eastern Conference. And to make that move with other coaches around the league that have plenty of experience, that have championships under their belt, like Doc Rivers, or even go after some of you go for like the Van Gundy brothers, or just maybe another head coach that has been there before, that has dealt with superstars like that. But their move was to go with Steve Nash. And I just thought about Jason Kidd at Milwaukee, and I'm like thinking, like, I don't think that works in the long term. And that's my thought process, right? But Stephen A goes out there on national television and says, this is white privilege. Excuse me, sir, but when I think of white people, I don't think of Steve Nash. I mean, he's European. And if you're trying to make this a race thing, I don't think Steve Nash is the guy to go to. But when we look around the NBA and we see a predominantly African-American league with black players, black coaches, black assistants, there are plenty of black coaches and assistants. I think the most important people in an organization are the assistants, not just the head coach. It's a collective effort. And I see a lot of these organizations that have won very recently. And I'm saying, like, it's not all white. It's African American. It's Hispanic. I mean, think of like Eric Spoelstra. Eric Spoelstra is not a white man. I forget where he is from. I don't know if he's Dominican or Puerto Rican. Don't quote me on that. But he's come from Hispanic heritage. Doc Rivers, he's won a championship in Boston. He's had plenty of time in LA with the Clippers. He is very important to the league. He is one of the most known coaches in the NBA. And a lot of these assistants around the league, like Alvin Gentry, these guys are very important to their organizations, to wherever they go. And not to mention the amount of black players that dominate this league. So how can you say that this is white privilege in a league that is more than half black players and personnel? That just doesn't make sense to me. And if anything, like, if that's your argument, why are you even on TV? it was ridiculous for that to be said on national television. Like, I can be behind you all day if you're like, Steve Nash has no coaching experience. Why the hell would he be hired? But to say because he's white and that's the conversation to have, like he was hired because he was white, that was ridiculous, man. That was ridiculous. The one last thing I want to talk about is a take or a conversation. Forget where it was. I don't know who posted it. But they were talking about, it might have been Pro Football Talk. But they were talking about who needs the win more, Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. And I said, excuse me, why is that a question? Why are we even talking about Tom Brady having to prove himself again? Dude, I'll answer that question because I think it is very important to ask what it means for 4 of these quarterbacks to win. Like, what does it do for them? First of all, Tom Brady doesn't have to prove anything. Doesn't have to prove anything whatsoever. If he gets outed by Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers on Sunday, cool. He is the most influential reason why the Bucs are in the NFC Championship. You cannot argue that. No matter what time it was in the year, he was throwing. He was wheeling and dealing. He was putting up the stats. When they put up 44, well, it's not because of the running game. It's because of Tom Brady. You're saying, oh, well, with all those weapons, of course you would score 44. Okay, then that should happen. And they've been doing that on a more consistent basis as of late. Their defense is really good. But if they want to win a championship, it is because of Tom Brady. They weren't going to get there with Jameis Winston. They weren't going to get there with Mike Glennon. They weren't going to get there with anybody else other than Tom Brady. Because we saw how bad the Bucs can be throughout the year. They were an inconsistent football team for a good 2 months to where we didn't know what team would show up, whether it was the 44-point team or the one that barely scores 20 and their defense can't stop anybody. Finally, we found a groove with the Tampa Bay Bucs, and a lot of it has to do with Tom Brady finally feeling more comfortable in the pocket, getting his deep shots down the field, finding that relationship with Antonio Brown and all of these receivers. Like Mike Evans is silently having the one of the best 2 months of his career. Like that dude is just balling out. He's putting up numbers. You can't catch anything if you're going against Marshall Lattimore, but like that, I mean, hey, they're here, right? Without Tom Brady, they are nothing. The Bucs wouldn't be anything. They'd be a good football team, not a great football team. What he did in New England, many will speculate and many will argue that it was more Bill Belichick than it was Tom Brady. Okay, you know what? That's not the worst take I've ever heard in my life. But to say that Tom Brady needs to prove anything, the only argument you have now is that can he do it without Bill Belichick? I think he's answered that question already, because if you're just going to say, well, he has Bruce Arians, who's also a great coach, well, then what's the argument here? Because no matter where you go, you would want a good head coach. No one's going to thrive with a bad head coach. No one's going to succeed with a bad offensive coordinator or head coach. Like, look at Matthew Stafford. Like, Matthew Stafford's a great quarterback, but we're always going to just put the stereotype or the title on him of being a loser that hasn't won anything because he has a terrible coach every year. He's never had a great coach. He's a good quarterback, but he's never going to do anything. So if Matthew Stafford would have gone to New England or he would have gone down to Tampa, I think he'd be doing really good things with a really good head coach. But I still don't think he would be at the level what Tom Brady's doing. And he never has, never will. Like, Tom Brady just brings a different element to the table of knowing when it's time to get it done. When to be clutch. When to lock it in. And this team, who went from losing all of their close games last year with Jameis Winston to not only winning those games this year, but to dominate these teams, to just absolutely focus up and become a dangerous football team within a year, does not just happen because your personnel got better. It's because a guy named Thomas Brady comes in and says, we're legit. We are serious. We're going to win a Super Bowl. Plain and simple. Win or bust. Plain and simple. And when we're talking about who needs that win more between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, how in anybody's mind is the answer Tom Brady? Like, how? I need to know what you eat on a regular basis because I don't think it's healthy. Aaron Rodgers needs to win this football game. I love Aaron Rodgers now. Can we all agree that he has been just a joy to watch over the last 8 months? The guy just doesn't care anymore about what people think. And he is just living his life. And don't you think that living his life should be rewarded after all the stuff that's happened in his personal life and all the criticism of him not being good enough? And he's washed up. Jordan Love being drafted. Don't you think it would just be a nice story for him to win another Super Bowl and finally get the second one? Like, Aaron Rodgers is probably the most talented and most athletic quarterback that I've ever seen in my lifetime. I will say that eventually about Patrick Mahomes one day, but for right now, Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback I've ever seen in my life. On the field, right? I just said Tom Brady's like phenomenal. I think Tom Brady is the most decorated quarterback of all time. And he is one of the greatest. But I'm saying all the things that are missing from Tom Brady being just unanimously the best to ever do it is because he's not fast. He doesn't have the strongest arm. He makes it work, right? But he's not the greatest, like, as far as tangibles. Aaron Rodgers is. And it's a Michael Jordan to LeBron James conversation for me. I think it's a good debate. Is that Michael Jordan, for me, means more to basketball than LeBron does, as far as the history. And I think that Michael Jordan will go down as the greatest of all time because of the impact he did to basketball and overall what it meant to the game. The type of personality and the character he was just won't be matched. But LeBron is, for me, more talented. He's a better shooter. He's a better rebounder. He's a better passer, better defensive player. That's just my opinion. Like, you can argue that, but that's how I see it. So I think that if we're comparing these two sports, Aaron Rodgers is LeBron James and Michael Jordan's Tom Brady. It's like, well, yeah, Michael Jordan has way more championships than LeBron James. I shouldn't say way more. I think it's they're closing the gap now. But for most of his career, it was like, well, you don't have the same championships or the same awards, the decoration that Michael Jordan has. Well, Aaron Rodgers is the same thing to Tom Brady. So the argument is why Aaron Rodgers is not the greatest of all time is because he just doesn't have the rings. He doesn't have the championships. If he wins the MVP and he wins the Super Bowl, I think that gap closes in. And I could honestly say that Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. Overall, right? But Tom Brady will always be just like on another level. It's because he did it so well for so long. He was a part of a dynasty, and he was a main reason why they won so much. Even though he's just so smart from the neck up, his brain, his mind, he's just perfected football in his mind. But Aaron Rodgers just does special things. He has a cannon of an arm. He can run. He makes really good decisions. He doesn't throw the ball to the other team. But he's missing the championships. So when you look at this game, for a guy that has 6 titles compared to 1 title, and we have a guy that has been dominating the league for 20 years and knows how to win Super Bowls, knows how to win clutch games, and has proven himself to be a great quarterback even after New England. On the opposite side, you have a guy that has been with one organization his entire life, and he just had a new quarterback be drafted in the first round instead of a wide receiver that could have helped him. So now the future, possibly in Green Bay, is behind him, much like Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. He's only won one Super Bowl. He had some rough years with Mike McCarthy and finally got fired. In his first year with Matt LaFleur, everybody criticized him for not having a good relationship, and they thought it was going to end badly. And then after last year's NFC Championship, well, that was just a debacle for Green Bay because it looked like Aaron Rodgers didn't want to be there. He had all the things to do with his personal life. He only has one ring. He hasn't won enough MVPs, and he's kind of just like there. Is he washed up? Is he done for? Is it time to move on? But yeah, Tom Brady needs to win this game more. What? Aaron Rodgers needs to win this game. He needs to win a Super Bowl. If he doesn't, I can't wait to hear the conversations of like, I told you so, Aaron Rodgers is not that good. One of the purest passers I've ever seen in my lifetime. And people want to talk down on Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers needs to win this football game. He does. Tom Brady doesn't need to do anything else in his career. Nothing to solidify his legacy. If he wins one more Super Bowl outside of New England, cool. I'll be like, way to shut the 1% that doesn't think you're good. Way to shut them down. But there is a vast majority of Aaron Rodgers haters that think he is not good enough to win another title. Those people are dumb. On the AFC side, who needs to win this game more? Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen? Is it even close? Like, Josh Allen needs to win. He's still so young. He still hasn't really proven himself to be the guy at the highest stage. Patrick Mahomes has done it already. He literally did it last year. He won in the most ridiculous fashions, whether it was down 24 to Houston, whether it was down to the Titans, whether it was down in the Super Bowl. The dude just took care of business. And in every time that you said, can Patrick Mahomes do that? He did that. And plus, he's got a whole career to just do it. I mean, we know that Kansas City is probably going to win another few championships, at least, right? So I'm not worried about Patrick Mahomes, about winning now and proving himself. I don't think he needs to prove anything to anybody. Josh Allen still has a lot to prove. I was a hater. I thought he was a bust. And watching him last week and the week before that in the playoffs, I saw a Josh Allen that felt right. He belonged in these games. Now, last week was a rough week for the Buffalo Bills just in general. This whole team did not play their best. So I can't really blame Josh Allen for his performance. But I said it last week. I thought Lamar Jackson had a hell of a lot to prove for his career, because if he can't show up in the biggest games of the year, whether that's regular season or playoffs, how can we really assess that he is a franchise quarterback that can win titles? Lamar Jackson has lost every important game in his career to the most important teams in the league, whether that's Kansas City, Buffalo, New England, whatever. Like, he continues to lose the most important games against the highest level of talent and the best teams around the league. Josh Allen has a small sample size of what we've seen yet. There's the first year in the playoffs where he goes against Houston, and they play that really and fascinating game, and Deshaun Watson gets his number. And he looked rough. Like, he was using his legs, he was getting first downs, but you felt like he was just being frantic and having to make the big play. He was trying to play hero ball. And then the first game against the Colts, I was like, wow, I'm really liking his composure, his stability in the pocket. I love what I'm seeing out of Josh Allen. He belongs now. And then last week, I'm like, okay, it wasn't the best game, but we'll move on. So this is a very important game. This is the most important game of Josh Allen's career. Patrick Mahomes, this is probably going to be the 30th most important game of his career. For Josh Allen, this is his Super Bowl. If he can beat Kansas City, then we're looking at the Buffalo Bills and saying, wait, this isn't just a nice story. This isn't just a Disney movie that we're seeing live. they can win the Super Bowl now. Like, they have a chance to win the Super Bowl more than the Chiefs. We haven't been able to say that all year long, and I don't think a lot of people outside of Buffalo have been willing to say that. But if he can beat Patrick Mahomes or Chad Henne, who cares? This is where it matters the most for Josh Allen. So we'll get more into it as we preview these games in the following episode. But I just want to come on and just talk about bad takes. I don't think I really talked about it enough because there's probably plenty more that I could have talked about. But it was just on my mind, guys. And I said this was going to be short. I lied. It's 52 minutes in. So, I'll let you go. I don't want to hear my voice for over an hour anyways. So thank you for watching or listening this episode of the Bubba Lutz Sports Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this. I don't want to do these often because I like having a guest. I just didn't have a guest this time. But I got some few things in mind. Some things fall through, some things don't. So I'm going to try to get some more new people on the podcast. And then we'll go from there. I didn't want to just leave it to where I just did maybe 1 or 2 episodes this week. I want to put out another one. So thank you again for all the support, guys. We're over 2,000 listens on all audio platforms. And then we're at 91 subscribers on YouTube. So I'll probably put out a video on all social media of me asking if you guys can subscribe. So if you could share that with your friends, family, anything really, having that 100 next to subscribers on YouTube can really get the ball rolling in 2021. Start a new era with the new logos for the Bubba Lutz Sports Podcast. So watch out for that if you're still listening, obviously. But thank you again, and we'll see you next time on the Bubba Lutz Sports Podcast.
Yeah, hold on. Tell me who's your top 5 quarterbacks right now, dead or alive, huh? And how much do you care about a ring if the best player got carried by the team? Now, would you lose if it been a better draft pick?